Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Hello, I've been playing with my new camera, and I'm not going to read the directions because that's not part of my repertoire. And here we are with like a slightly crooked video. Got the two cameras going though. So for those of you not watching, I highly encourage you to, at the very least, subscribe to my YouTube channel at the BZ channel and like a video, like help a sister out. It has been a slow roll. I guess that's just how I'm hardwired though. But I'm going to get back to the business brouhaha, I promise. I've obviously been on a very transformational journey over these last couple months, and spoiler alert, might be starting 2 new businesses because I have a serious fucking problem, but also like partnership and doing what I do best and saying no to all of the things. And it's all happening. I'm having really cool conversations, and despite the dumpster fire of a fucking world that we live in. And I just want to acknowledge as well, I don't spend a lot of time talking about the political and current events, shall we say. Firstly, there's a lot of other people doing that. Secondly, I'm not sure how much talking about them helps. Like, firstly, I don't need to trauma bond with y'all. Secondly, I'm doing my damn work. Like, there's a lot of things I'm doing in my life and a lot of investment and sacrifice that I truly believe is creating the world I want to live in. And I don't need to brag about it. I don't need to talk to you about it. It feels very virtue signally of me. And also, like, what does it matter? Like, you won't personally benefit from it. So I mean, I'll share what's going on with me, but I don't know. I consume a lot of podcasts. It's kind of my main form of content now, especially that I'm off social media. And there's like a 20-minute disclaimer about like who we are and what we're doing and the privilege we're experiencing and all of the problems in the world. And that's all great. And I watch and consume all of that content. I'm not saying that, but I felt like it needed to be aired because this episode is going to be all about regret. Actually, not regret. I had a mantra for most of my entire life that was no regrets. I'd rather try something and figure out if it's going to work for me or not. I would rather take a really big risk. I would rather make a really big mistake to at least know, well, I tried it. I did the dang thing. And believe me, I've had many a moment just in the last couple months where I was like, well, we don't ever get to make a decision again because this is too many mistakes. And I don't think we're going to be able to right this wrong. And 2 things happened. I listened to this absolutely profound podcast with David White, who's a poet, and Tim Ferriss. And then he was on Rick Rubin's podcast. And it was a very similar conversation. And he said it in one, not the other. I'm pretty sure it was Rick Rubin's, and he didn't get to it in Tim Ferriss's. And it's so interesting because I almost thought, like, why would I need to listen to this guy talk again? Except for that I listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast like 8 times. It made me cry. It inspired me. I started writing all day, every day after it. It was like a truly transformative. I don't know if you ever have those moments where you listen to something and it just changes you as a human or an artist or both. Anywho, highly recommend. I'll link to both in the show notes. If you're on the loop, I've already shared both with you as well. Or if you're in my personal circle, I've probably sent it to you like 5 times. But the point being, and we'll circle back to this with a little bit more discussion, is I've been someone who said no regrets. And it's truly driven me. Like, I've moved hemispheres. I've started businesses. I've made 6-figure investments. I've bet it all on black. And up until very recently, I felt pretty fucking cool being hardwired for that. And then David White said something around, you're not living life. I have this specific quote in my notes and we'll get to it. But like, have you truly lived if you have no regrets? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it also gave me this opportunity to think about, like, what do I mean when I say no regret? And it's truly attachment. It's how much am I spending in the past, in my story, to validate or justify or romance what ultimately was just a really great learning experience. And we've often heard, like, there are no mistakes. Everything's a learning experience. And the place where I got my coaching education has all of these different like laws, right? And you're exactly where you're meant to be. There are no mistakes. These are all things that their assumptions. The sort of founder, Bruce Schneider, asks you to investigate, because I think to be a transformational coach, those assumptions are useful, especially if they feel true. But like, how trite is it to say there are no mistakes? Failure shapes success. Fail fast, fail often, fail forward. But there are lies we've been sold about failure. And also, I think we've trivialized mistakes. And it's interesting when I think about it in the sense of you are not learning, you are not growing if you're not falling on your face a few times. This was all inspired by a very good, very old friend of mine who's very successful, business owner, entrepreneur in the creative industries. I met him when he was stacking shelves in a grocery store. And now this dude is independently wealthy, travels the world, works with celebrities, like whatever your definition of success is. Like, bro gets to surf and like remote, like I think he went to Iceland to go surfing to follow a fucking wave. Also yogi, also meditate, also ladies, very single and devastatingly gorgeous, but I digress. He from Sydney, Australia. He's from that lifetime of mine. And I did not get his permission to tell this story, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen. And if you do, at me, I love you. He'd had this beautiful, amazing, unbelievable life, lives in Bondi Beach, if you know, you know, and was feeling very stuck. And it's always hard when one of your gorgeous, wealthy friends who has a job that they work like maybe a month out of the year and they make enough money that that's all they need to do, and they have enough money in the bank account that like they probably don't even need to do that. And they're like, no, I feel stuck. And you're like, cool, I feel stuck because the entire world was just flooded and burned for me, but like, go on. And he'd been talking about moving overseas. It's pretty easy in certain industries to feel like you're stuck if you don't live in the United States ultimately, right? But like, fuck the United States. So he wanted to move to Europe. And we've literally been talking about this for maybe 10 years, or at least just make a big move. I think he had initially wanted to come to the US. He did actually try it in Canada and then got into a wicked snowboarding accident, but I digress. Point being, he did it. He moved to Berlin. And on the other side of this experiment, about 6 months later, he moved back to Sydney. And he said to me, BZ, I think I failed. And I was like, on what planet does getting to live overseas in a badass city like Berlin for 6 months, giving it a go, trying to get your career up and off the ground in a completely foreign country, and then just kind of realizing like, you know what? I did it. I loved it. It was a hell of an experience. I met some really cool people, but I've got some really cool opportunities banging on my door that if I said yes to, I could do this anywhere I want in the world, whenever I want in the world. Like, how is that failure? But because it hadn't resulted in some career defining gig, I mean, it had. He ended up working with Scorsese while he was there, but whatever. That probably would have happened anywhere in the world he might have been, except for that he was much closer. But anywho, it's so interesting how when we have an expectation, regardless if we overshoot it, you know, you miss the moon and land on the stars, it still feels like disappointment, because that's all disappointment is a gap in expectation. And I'm going to use this story and this idea that just because it didn't work out the way that we expected doesn't mean it was a fucking mistake. Mistakes don't exist. Failure is actually a tool. And like I said in the last episode, it's only a failure if you stop right there. But if we're even having this conversation, that's a complete fallacy. Failure and mistakes and loss and destruction, like these are not tragedies unless you hold on to them so tightly they can't get let go. And then that's what like regret is, right? But like even feeling that is just proof you're alive. You're doing the dang thing. So I want to talk about failure, hopefully in some different frames of light. I want to give you a couple of ways that when you're failing, which I know I've done it plenty of fucking times. Like, what do you do when you're in the fail, right? And can we make it fuel for success? And then lastly, let's talk about some game-changing insights about mistakes that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, or at least realizing and truly integrating, because if they did, there would be no failure and there would be no mistake. So I hope you're going to feel better by the end of this, and just recognize that these experiences, these hits are so useful. First, because I've been totally nerding out on all of this stuff, let's talk about some groundbreaking theories and studies that offer some fresh perspectives on failure and how it truly does serve as a catalyst for success. So, impasse-driven learning. Traditional views are often see errors as setbacks, but the concept of impasse-driven learning suggests otherwise. This theory posits that encountering an impasse, a situation where current knowledge and skills are insufficient and expectation is not met, there is a gap, this triggers deeper cognitive processing. It forces us to hit this block and then compels you to restructure your understanding, leading to a more robust learning outcome. If you just keep getting to do the same thing you've done over and over again, you're not really like flexing. You're not really proving it. Like my friend going to this completely foreign country and doing all of the things he did to get work didn't help him understand what he loves about his job, what he loves about his home, what he loves about creating new connections and opportunities until it did, right? Like he had continually wondered, like, can I be the creator that I want to be in this place where I feel stuck? So he switched it all up, and it turns out some really great opportunities showed up in the place where he felt stuck. Could they have happened without each other? We'll never know. But this approach emphasizes errors aren't just inevitable, but essential drivers of cognitive development. So what my friend discovered is actually there's nothing wrong with his home, with staying in the same spot. He shook it up, and ultimately he came to the conclusion that like, it's not a bad thing being where I'm at, which was something he had always been questioning, but he just didn't have the opportunity to hypothesize and test it. So even though things didn't work out, he didn't meet his expectations, he didn't kick the big goals he had set for himself, that doesn't necessarily make it a failure. To be able to come back, like quote unquote, home and thrive could potentially be the biggest success story he has, right? So here's another theory I'd not heard of: negative knowledge. Building upon the idea that mistakes are valuable, the theory of negative knowledge focuses on understanding what is incorrect to enhance comprehension of what is correct. By recognizing and internalizing errors, individuals develop a clearer sense of boundaries and limitations, which sharpens decision-making and problem-solving skills. This perspective underscores that knowing what not to do is as crucial, if not even more powerful, than knowing what to do. And understanding this helps frame failures as informative experiences that delineate the contours of effective action. And I see this play out so often when people hire me because they have a career, they want to start a side hustle, and what they know about their job and career is all of the things they hate and they don't want. That gives them so much information in terms of what they want to do next and how they want to do it. And you'll often hear people say, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know really what I want to do next. What don't you want to do? The opposite of that's probably going to be pretty telling, right? And at least worth trying. And so it can take a lot of us what feels like an entire lifetime to figure out, this is who I am, this is what I do best, this is how I want to do it. But we learned all of that by fucking everything else up along the way, right? So perhaps there's a reframe available to you there, and it looks a little something like, well, if that's not working, I don't have to do it anymore. Negative knowledge. And lastly, emotional dynamics and organizational transformation. So a study from Oxford University, Said Business School, it highlights the pivotal role of emotions in learning from failure within organizations. The research found that transformations prioritizing human-centric approaches are 2.6 times more likely to succeed. By acknowledging and addressing the emotional responses to failure, organizations can foster resilience and adaptability, turning setbacks into opportunities for growth. This insight shifts the focus from purely cognitive analyses of failures to a more holistic understanding that includes emotional intelligence as a key component of successful adaptation. Okay, in like plain English, If people are afraid of making mistakes in your organization, you cannot succeed. People are afraid of making mistakes because they get in trouble for them, right? And so if we identify the fear, the regret, the resentment, the resistance around like doing hard things because of the uncertainty that's on the other side of it, how will your business, how will your workplace innovate? How will you collaborate? How will you ideate? How will you iterate? Like all of these eights. But seriously, so often I see leaders saying, I want my team to try something new and to take a risk and to category design, to blue ocean, to come up with something completely new. But then they're white knuckling every single error, mistake, and move that their people are doing and writing their fucking asses about it. And it's like, you can't have both. And I was actually reading the Harvard Business Review in terms of culture. And there was this matrix in terms of like what you're highlighting and really focusing on. And if you have a low risk, i.e. a place where it feels bad to fuck up place, like there's low innovation. So that's fine. No judgment. Do you build the castle you want to, reign over, but like just recognize that if people are constantly getting in trouble, or if you even like feel judgmental or frustrated by when your people fuck up, they feel that and they're not gonna try new things as a result. There's going to be very little engagement to rolling out new cultural strategies and endeavors and new ways of doing business. So anywho, I digress. These perspectives move beyond conventional discussions because they offer nuanced insight into how failures function as integral components of learning and success. So when you can embrace failure, like I always say, the proof is in the problem. When we recognize if we are running up against these kind of mental or emotional blocks, it's because we're pushing ourselves. We're finding these new obstacles and we're asking like, how can we circumnavigate this? I believe that's great. Some people don't. Totally fine. They're probably not listening. When you can embrace failure, when you can celebrate mistakes, you will transform your approach to these obstacles, and you won't look at them as dead ends, but as essential elements of the journey towards mastery and innovation. So just a couple of case studies. Again, things I didn't know. Perhaps you didn't either. Did y'all know that the first time Oprah was on TV, she was told she wasn't fit for television? I kind of remember this. I mean, this was a long time ago, let's be real. But she did get fired. She got fired from her first anchor job because they thought she was too emotional. That failure forced her to switch lanes and start a talk show where emotional connection was the whole point. And the Oprah Winfrey Show went on to make her the first Black female billionaire. This wasn't just a happy accident. This is proof that things that seem like mistakes are often the setup for success. So how can you use failure as a weapon for your own growth? Here's another story. Did you know this? Nintendo was also near bankrupt. Also, did you know Nintendo? When I saw this factoid, I had to check it because I was like, no way, man. It started in 1889. 1889 as a playing card manufacturer, made fucking cards. For 70 years, they tried different business ventures. 70 years. So into the 1960s, including a taxi service, talk about a pivot, instant rice, and even a love hotel business. I don't know what that means, but okay, Nintendo. All of them failed. In the 1970s, desperate for survival, they pivoted again, this time into video games. The first console they launched, the color TV game, was a flop. Didn't know that either. Then came the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1983, and everything changed. Nintendo became one of the most iconic gaming companies in history. If they hadn't failed at literally everything else, they would never have even bet big on gaming. So failure forces reinvention. And then last, but most certainly not least, and my favorite example to share in this one, Rick Rubin, my spirit animal, Did you know that he started Def Jam Records? I mean, yes, you knew he started Def Jam Records, but from a college dorm room. And like also as like an ex-punk rocker into like hip hop, love. So he wasn't just a business mogul. He was a punk kid at NYU who loved music. He started experimenting with producing tracks, but it was a total disaster. And if you know anything about Rick Rubin, his sort of calling card is he wasn't a classically trained musician. Like he never studied music, couldn't read or write music, didn't know how to work music technology, and did the dang thing anyway, right? He had no formal training. He didn't know how to mix sound. And he sucked when he first started. Also, a side note, which I think is very worth, this is for all my oys in the house, but he used to play in a band with 3 friends, performing at garage gigs and at school shows until a teacher was like, you suck. You know what genre is really good for being bad at music? Punk rock. So he started a band called The Pricks, and their biggest claim to fame was being thrown off the stage at CBGB's. But hold up, it was like a complete PR setup. So he had so they got thrown off the stage because of a massive fight that broke out with like hecklers in the crowd. But it was his friends who started fights that he told to come and start a fight. And even more so, he got his dad to dress up like a fucking cop to then show up and act like this was a really big deal. And Rick staged all of this because he knew the buzz would make it like a very notorious story. And here I am talking about it. Jesus, what is that, like 50 years later? Oh my fucking God. Not quite. We're going to go like 40-ish. I was not there, just for the record. But Rick's lack of technical or artistic expertise did not stop him. And in fact, it gave him this really unique way to work with and think about music. And it became his greatest asset. He stripped music down to its rawest form, breaking all of the rules of production. And also a limitation, aka being broke, forced this minimalist, bass-heavy style that was completely different from anything else anybody was listening to, especially on the radio. So with zero fucking connections, he launched Def Jam Records out of his dorm room with a cheap 4-track recorder. And he was completely ignored by everybody until he started signing underground talent like LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, and Run DMC. His, air quotes, wrong way of producing became the signature sound of hip-hop's golden age. And today, he's, I would go so far as to say, one of the most influential people ever. And he's worked with everybody across all genres. As per usual, I like to give you a few ways to kind of play with this, right? So I thought this was a really interesting strategy I've not actually talked about before. The rejection resume strategy. So Dr. Johannes Haushofer, a Princeton professor, published his CV of failures, a literal resume of every job, grant, and opportunity he got rejected from. Why? Because success is built on failures. So try that. Try writing down every fucking rejection you've ever had. And next to it, write what it forced you to learn or do next. You'll start to see your mistakes as setups and not just proof that you're unworthy. Secondly, the 48-hour rule. Failure fucking smarts. Like, yeah, it's not fun. I'm not trying to like placate the experience by any means. And if you've been around the block a few times, you know, like it's kind of inevitable. It's going to happen. So successful people time box their emotional response. And I first learned of this at this summit kind of leadership coalition. A few people had been like cherry picked from the arts industries in Australia to be in this kind of like mastermind setting where we were both instructed, but then connecting and blah, blah, blah. And there was an organizational psychologist there. I've told this story before, but we went on a walk and I had said how I almost declined the opportunity because I truly didn't feel worthy. I don't know why I had gotten selected. I was in the same room with people I was literally modeling my career off of, like the 5 most influential people I saw in the arts and music industries in the Southern Hemisphere. I hate it when people say that. In Australia, I tried to make it sound cool, but really it was just that big one white country. Anyhow, I had picked a handful of people that I was like, I think they're doing really cool shit. I like the way they're doing it. And most importantly, I like the art that they're working with. And now I'm sitting at a fucking table with them, like as a peer. And I had truly almost declined the invitation. There was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life at that moment as well. And so the psychologist and I went for a walk, and he said, you're allowed to doubt yourself, and you're allowed to be afraid, and you're allowed to wallow in your own self-pity for sure. It's just a part of experience. But then you're going to put your pants on and make gold records. Compartmentalize it. Do it on your morning run. Do it before 8 o'clock. Do it in your, witching hour between finishing work and starting your night. But you can't be in that energy all of the time and do anything worthwhile. And that energy is very real. It ain't going anywhere. So compartmentalize it. And I look at this kind of the same. Give yourself 48 hours to feel it. Punch a pillow, scream, cry, journal, drink too much. I don't know. And give yourself whatever time frame feels real. Sometimes when I'm really in it, it's like every 15 minutes, I just check in to see, am I alive yet? And sometimes that question doesn't get answered for a few months. It's not necessarily about the time. It's about the compartmentalization and recognizing we're not going to be here forever. We're going to be here as long as we need to be here to process this and to learn from it, but we ain't staying. So test it. When something really, really fucks you up and does not go the way you wanted it to, feel it and give yourself the opportunity to not. Lastly, the failure portfolio. Treat failure like an R&D investment, research and development. Big companies literally allocate millions and millions of dollars. They just light that money on fire because they're testing new ideas. They're experimenting, recognizing that not all of this is going to work. They're literally investing in failure because they know those failures lead to breakthroughs. So list 5 risks you took in business or life and identify one hidden win in each one of those 5 risks. Use that insight in your next move. I've talked a lot about this in terms of just coaching 101, but look back on what felt like an insurmountable obstacle that you overcame because you're here listening to this right now. What skill was it that got you around it? That might be applicable in this next moment of insurmountable obstacle. So it's a similar way. It's a slightly more in-depth way of approaching that, but writing 5 things that felt like absolute 100% fuck ups. And then the one thing that actually came of it that you would never have expected. And how can you use the average of those 5 hidden wins now? I also think it's super fucking useful. And I know I've said this one a million times to not just have a CV of failures, but please, please, please have a list of all of your successes not for whatever reason. It's based on survival and blah, blah, blah. But our brains are hardwired to look for all of the failures. There is so much more evidence, hard, cold facts and data supporting your success than there is failure. And yet we forget all of it. You learn to tie your shoes, you learn to brush your teeth, you learn how to fucking do the laundry. My dad, just learned how to do the laundry. He's really fucking proud of himself. Believe me, that man is celebrating himself every single success. There will be pages and pages. I encourage you to just keep a little notepad and just keep adding to it. And sometimes it looks like I got out of bed today. And sometimes it looks like I got recognized on the international level. It doesn't fucking matter. But pay attention to those wins. Okay, so the part that I promised you. The price of a life fully lived, regret. That is a quote from David Whyte, the poet and philosopher. Why? Regret means you were bold enough to try. It's proof that you played the game and wait for it. You took the risk. You didn't just sit on the sidelines, and it really fucking mattered. That's the part about regret. It was really important to us. And I say this all the time about people, the fear of failure, fear of success, the kind of Amy Cuddy presence conundrum, imposter phenomenon. Of course, it's scary. Of course, we're going to want to hold on to that pain because it mattered so much to us. And that's beautiful. You are a passionate, committed individual, and that is going to come with some painful experiences. The suffering is optional. So we've talked a lot about this, the future you exercise. Once again, so powerful to just give yourself some perspective in these moments of utter and total failure or really ruminating in mistakes. There's a lot of people around me right now who are what if-ing, shoulda, woulda, coulda-ing. And you can only know those things with 20/20 hindsight. But now you know, what are you going to do with that knowledge now in this moment moving forward? Mistakes are a mirror. They show you what actually matters. If you regret something, it means it was important. Use that intel to shape your next move. You are already winning the game of probability. Most successful people fail 80% of the time. The difference? They keep playing the fucking game. And they play it long enough so the odds are turn in their favor. And this was just reflected back at me because of some of the monumental mistakes I've been and messes I've been cleaning up. And someone said, BZ, you've been in the real estate game for over 20 years. Like there are economic cycles you cannot escape if you keep playing the game that long. So you're going to beat yourself up over it. I mean, the rest of us look at you kind of going, what the fuck? Like she's really made it work. And you're looking at the last thing that really didn't and going, I'm not an investor. I'm not a developer. Like I'm a failure. And I was like, oh, I guess if you put it like that. So like I make these episodes just as much for me as I do for you, my friend. Keep playing the game. Play the odds. The universe works on delay, not denial. Failure often means you weren't ready yet. What seems like rejection is often just a delay because something better is coming. And this relates very heavily to the last episode. Don't lose the faith. Recognize that this is just a bump on the road. This is what's going to make it an interesting story. And again, I know that's trite. I know you know that, but hopefully we covered a few insights in this episode that'll give you even more perspective on what your mistakes, what your failures offer you. There are no mistakes. There's pivots, there's lessons, there's redirections, there's pushes, because there's something greater. It does just get better. So the question isn't, what if I fail? The question is, what will I do with the failure when it happens? If you master this, you don't just survive setbacks. You become unstoppable. Can't stop, won't stop. Love you.